this video, I'll show you how to shoot a warm winter portrait in your small home studio using 201 lights. Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching Adorama TV, brought to you by Adorama, the camera store that's got everything for us photographers. And today in my small home studio, I'm going to shoot a portrait that has a sort of festive feel. And I'm going to get that feeling by adding warm tones to my picture. Now the warmth is going to come from a couple of different places. The first one is the background. I have this lovely wood background, which until very recently was actually the decking in my back garden, but it's been repurposed for my studio and looks great. The floor, well, I'm definitely going to need to do something better than what we've got here. I'll work on that in a minute. But one more thing that says festive is Christmas lights. And I have a lot of Christmas lights. In fact, in total, I've got 201 lights to set up. So let's get some lights set, let's get a model in, let's get shooting. So to help me out today, I've got the amazing Sophie. Sophie is going to be the model for this shoot. And as you can see, she has a little box of LED lights glowing down there. And that's what we're going to use as part of the shoot. But they're also the dimmest lights in this setup by far. So my first job is to work out the exposure for those, and then we'll work out any extra lights from there. So to do this, I'm going to set my camera into manual mode and start by choosing a shutter speed. I think a 60th of a second is a good place to be. That means I shouldn't get any camera shake and Sophie shouldn't move too quickly and blur. So with that in mind, I then need an ISO. So I'm going to go with 400 ISO and let's try maybe f2.8, something like that. Now for this to work, I can't have the video lights on, so we're going to turn the video lights off and take a test shot. Okay, Sophie, here we go. And at those settings, well, I can see the LED lights glowing. That looks lovely, but I can't really see anything of Sophie. Now that might be okay, but I think I'd like a little bit of light from those LEDs on Sophie and for them just to appear a little brighter. So I'm kind of lucky with this lens because it actually goes to an f1.2, which will let in much more light. Now I'm not going to go as far as that. Let's go for f1.4, everything else the same, and test that. So once again, we'll turn the lights out, take a test shot. And that looks really good. Now we can see a little bit of Sophie in there. Those lights are looking a little bit brighter. All in all, I think that's going to work better for the shot I've got in mind. So to light Sophie, I'm going to use a flash. I've got an eVOLV 200. I could use an LED light, but I'm going to use flash because, well, I've got lots of flashes in my studio, so that kind of makes sense. I've got it on its lowest possible power. We could do this by trial and error to see whether that's the right exposure, or I can grab my flash meter and actually meter it out. So I've set my flash meter up to the same settings as my camera. Let's hold this close to Sophie's chin and just see what we're getting. And I'm getting f1.4. That's a bit of luck. That's exactly what I'm shooting, so I'm good to go. Now, once again, I need to turn the lights out and take a test shot. Yeah, and that looks great. Sophie looks nicely lit. There is a slight difference in colour between the LEDs and Sophie. So to get around that, I'm just going to add a little bit of an orange gel inside of my light here, and that should help to even up the colours. So that's the basic lighting in place. I think we're ready to do a shoot. So Sophie, are you ready? Okay, let's turn the lights out. Let's do a shoot. Well, that went really well, and now I get to do the post-processing. Now, luckily, all of that work setting the camera up means that I don't actually have to do much post-processing to the pictures. Does that mean there's nothing to do whatsoever? No, of course not. There's always something to do. Let's have a little look. So this picture represents many of the images I shot, especially when I go in close and have a look at the LEDs, because I had 10 sets of LEDs, and that means 10 battery boxes, and some of them are visible in the picture. Now, to get rid of those battery boxes, I want to use a non-destructive technique. So I'll use Layer, New, and Layer. I'll call this Clone, so I know what it's done. And then I'm going to use the Clone Stamp tool to remove the battery boxes. Now, make sure, if you're going to do this, that you have samples set to not current layer, but either current layer and below, or all layers. Doesn't matter which of the two, they will both work. Now, I need to sample a good area and draw it over the top of the battery boxes. I'll hold the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac, click once on an area I want to sample, and then let go of the Alt key and just click and paint over the area I want to clone, just like that. So it's worth just moving things around and just sampling different areas and building the effect up. Otherwise you can just have an exact copy of what's already there and it looks a bit obvious. But have a closer look, make sure you're copying everything. And there's a few areas here. There is definitely a battery box there. I want to follow the line of this, so I'll hold the Alt key and sample from there, let go of Alt, and then I can line everything up really easily. There's one on the other side as well, which is going to annoy me. There we go, that's fine. Okay, now I could keep cloning and removing these bits across the bokeh, but they were actually there. I'm going to keep those in. But non-destructive editing means I can undo this and change it and redo it at any time in the future. Now there's one more area I want to work on, and that's the top left corner, which is just a bit blank and empty. I want to add something there, but again, I want to do it non-destructively. So slightly different technique this time. I'm going to go back to my layers and click on the background layer, make that active. And then because I'm going to apply a filter to create an effect, I'll choose Filter and convert this to a smart filter, which converts it to a smart object, which is beyond what we're going to cover in this video. Then back to filter. The filter I want to use is actually the Camera Raw filter. So if you're a Lightroom user, this is the same as the Develop module inside of Lightroom. And I could use any of the filters here, but I'm actually going to use the radial filter. And I'm really going to pump up the exposure to put some flare in that top left corner. Now obviously the radial filter gives a nice curve, but it also applies it to the other three corners. I'll deal with those in a minute. So a bit of flare looks good there. I think maybe a bit more contrast. Maybe if I pull the blacks back slightly, pump up the temperature. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. If I go in close, I can actually see that there is some definite noise in that area there. So I want to get rid of that noise because that's just been introduced by the effect I've added. And I think the easiest way to do that is just to take the texture and remove the texture a fair chunk, and that helps to blend that noise out. Okay, that's pretty good, but what about the other corners? Well, if I zoom back out again, I'm just going to switch to the radial filter brush, make sure it's set to minus, and I can just paint away anything that I don't want. So really, I'm just radial filtering the top left corner. And there you go. Click the OK button. That takes me back to my main image, and that's my final picture completed. Now you might be wondering what the hardest part of this whole technique was, and I can tell you honestly, it's going to be untangling all of these lights. I'm not looking forward to that at all. Now, if you've enjoyed this video or you've got any questions, leave me a comment below. Click on the bell icon to get regular notifications of all the brand new videos right here at Adorama TV, and of course, click on that subscribe button. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.